All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Wacky Wednesday for May. And today we have Dr. Nandwani from Tennessee State University, who is going to talk to us about fruit tree pruning and grafting mainly. And he'll be also able to answer some questions at the end, or if you have a question of a burning desire and you are afraid you're going to forget, just put it in the chat box and I will be monitoring the chat box. And so I'm glad to see you all here today. And Dr. Nandwani, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, we'll let you get started.
Sure. Thanks, Carla. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm going to share my screen, the PowerPoint. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, very good.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. I see it's 12:01. So yeah, afternoon. My name is Dilip Nandwani. I work for TSU, College of Ag and horticulturist. I like to provide some basics of pruning today. In next about 60 minutes, about an hour or so. And to begin with, what tools you may need for pruning. And you're looking at the picture which provide some of the tools. The important ones are the pole pruning saw. It comes 12 feet or 10 feet. Very important so that the gardener or pruner can reach to the height of trees wherever they are pruning. The second you're looking in the middle is also a pole saw, but it's a cordless. So it's a 40-volt cordless. And the first one you saw that, I'm not sure how many of you are already practicing pruning. So how many of you are using these tools, but I'm pretty sure you are familiar with some of these tools. The third one is another important one is a tree trimmer, is a loper. Again, it's about 1 to 2 feet depending on the brand, couple of feet long, and it can reach to up to 3 to 4 feet high on the tree branches to prune. They are extendable also, so it can go up to 5 to 6 feet also, depending on the size and the brand. At the bottom, you're looking at the small hand saw, simpler one, to trim the smaller, lower branches on the tree, which you are going to prune. And some other tools may be helpful. You are looking at the bottom right side, like shear, pruner. There are a couple of types which I will be showing you in the next few minutes and talk a little bit about those two shears. So the first thing is good tools. Yes, of course, they are very necessary, very important for the pruning job. But of course, they are recommended for long-term use, and they vary with the price in general, but it reflects the quality. 3 types of tools, as I mentioned in the first previous slide: the hand pruning shears, the folding or fixed handled pruning saw, and third is the loping shears or the lopers with 24 to 30-inch handles you saw in the previous picture. Folding ladders and extension ladders, they are unsafe. So they are not really designed for, because the unstable ground or tree work. So this is just a little bit caution if you climb on these folding ladders and these extension ladders. There is an orchard, which is tripod ladder, that is considered acceptable and safer to use in the pruning. So there are two types of pruners. You are looking at the picture on the screen, the bypass pruner and the anvil type of pruners. The bypass ones, they make a good, nice and clean cut, and they reduce the risk of damage to the tree also, and most commonly used in pruning. The anvil pruners, they can be used and they are better for cutting up the dead branches, dead wood, which we want to remove from the tree. So what are the objectives of training, objectives of pruning and training trees? Mainly four objectives. First one, that it establish a strong tree framework. It facilitates management of tree and crops. Next is it harvests sunlight very efficiently. And pruning maintain productivity by renewing fruiting wood. And we will see that how these objectives can be achieved in detail. So the first one, you're looking at that pruning, it enhances, it establishes a tree framework. Like when we make any building, our homes or any commercial buildings, there is an architecture, right? So there is a building architecture, and similarly in plants, in trees, good architecture is also very important. So the good, strong tree framework, it brings the benefits. It likes the upright vertical trunk. It distributes the scaffold, different branches we call scaffolds, and the angles, the branch angles, or we call wide crotch angles, it widens, and basically it opens the canopy, which you will be seeing in next few minutes also. The next one is that the management of the tree and crops. So pruning height of the primary scaffolds. So, and then scaffolds, they have to distribute well in all the directions. That's why the pruning is important, that we have to open up these branches and distribute them, in all the directions. And why, I'm going to tell you in a minute. So that the next benefit is that the tree, they look very uniform, and that affects the tree size also. So the pruning is recommended on annual basis, so that the tree, they have the controlled height, it can control the size, and it won't go really get taller and taller. The another purpose of pruning, very important, related to the sunlight. So to harvest the sunlight, the pruning, it helps a lot. It harvests sunlight very efficiently. And I'm going to show you in next few slides that how much it can affect. So poor light intensity, it leads to poor fruit color. So what happens on the top of the tree canopy, let's say 100% light, it falls on the top areas. And the study says that in the middle and at the bottom of the tree, it can reach up to only 30%. So there is a big difference in the sunlight from 30% or maybe sometime less than 30%, depending on the stage of the tree, if it is not really pruned. And from 30 to 70%, that's the big gap or the difference in the sunlight. And the sunlight, as we know, that it's responsible for plant growth and development. And that leads to the poor fruit color. Even the distribution of fruits may be uneven. Where there is a more sunlight on the branches, the fruit color, the fruit flavor, and number of fruits, the size, they may be larger or higher in number compared to the fruits lower in the branches. On the lower side, there is a less sunlight. So pruning is very important so that it brings the sunlight very evenly and distributes. Here you go. So the fourth one is that pruning maintains the productivity. And you're looking at this picture on the right side, and you're seeing that the average light distribution as a percentage of full sunlight in standard sized delicious apple trees. And the shaded area you are looking at in the middle or the top on the lower side, interior branches, it gets the less than 30% sunlight, and that brings inferior fruit quality and the color. And that's from a published information. So it sustains a maximum bearing area for maximal time. It maintains light distribution in the canopy. It removes the unproductive wood, and pruning maintains the good vegetative and the fruit balance. So what are the reasons, excuse me, for pruning? It controls the size of the tree so that we can care all those trees very easy, swiftly. It is a primary home consideration, especially for the home gardeners, that they want to have easy care for their trees grown in their backyard. The next, that pruning, it develops strong limb structure. The strong tree trunk is very important so that it can be stable in high wind conditions and other weather conditions. So it makes the limb, the main leader or the main trunk is in the strong ones. Pruning distributes sunlight evenly, as we just saw in the previous slide, throughout the tree. Pruning helps in removing the undesirable wood from those trees, whether it is a diseased, infected, or dead wood. If the trees are not pruned, sometimes these branches, they cross each other. So it's important that those crossing branches need to be removed so that it opens the canopy and the benefit we see that, such as the sunlight. Pruning regulates fruit bearing. It removes the excess fruit wood, and also it renews the fruit wood so that the buds, whether it is the leaves, but mainly the fruit buds, it leads to the floral bud development. So what are the pruning principles? It's basically also, art and science, like in grafting, if you are familiar with that. Like in grafting, we have to have a nice matching cambium so that the two different trees come together, they unite. In pruning also, there are some principles. Basically, it's a dwarfing process, and it used to control tree form and function. And there are three different types of cuts, pruning cuts are popular. I'm going to go in the next slide thing to describe that one. Yes. So three types of cuts: heading cut, reduction cut, and removal cut. So the removal cut, what happens? It removes a branch from the trunk or parent branch just outside the collar where the main branch is attached to the central leader or the tree trunk, the main trunk. That is called collar. So it least likely to spur the new shoots. So it's basically removes the whole branch. Okay, so if you make the removal cut, then it removes the whole branch. Reduction, as you can see in the picture, it's kind of halfway from the main that branch we want to prune. It shortens a branch back to a lateral branch sufficient size, which is almost 1/3 diameter or more. And this directs energy into the lateral, shortening the branch, and it can spur the new shoots, new growth in the branches. And the heading cut is a cut made on the apical region or on the top branches on the top side, which is called topping or tipping, and it shortens a branch without regard to a position or diameter of lateral branches. So it is used to spur the new growth and also floral bud and spur development where this cut is made. Okay, so how it impacts, how these cuts pruning cuts can impact on the new sprouts. So you're looking at these pictures. On the left side, the removal and reduction cuts, and the left before, and you are looking at the after. So you're seeing that how these pruning cuts are made, and after some time of this pruning, where new flush of growth occurs. On the right side is a heading cut, which is tipping or topping, which removes the apical parts, apical branches, apical tips of the tree branches before, and you are seeing after that how this heading cut can spur the new growth. So there are some of the practices and tips I'm going to share, maybe about 10 tips or the practices in next few slides. A new pruner effect is that a person who hasn't started yet pruning or first time may think that he's not cutting enough, or he may be too worried about that he or she can damage the tree, or the tree may not bear fruits, may lose the potential. So that's called new pruner effect. But over the time, it goes away. Pruning combines, it's both art and science, as I explained in the beginning. So the first one, first practice or the tip, that prune trees when the leaves are off, when trees are in dormant stage, when they shed leaves, the late winter, that's the best time. One of the most popular timing of the pruning is late winter, and I will show in the next few slides again. So when tree is in dormant stage, leaves are off, we can see the branches very well, the tree trunk and all the branches, small and big ones. So it is very easy to see that what we are doing, where we are making cuts, okay? So, and we see these buds, whether leaf bud or floral buds, Exceptional is maybe apricot and cherry because they may have summer pruning. I will be showing in few minutes. So the summer pruning, late winter and summer, there are two types of two times or timings of the pruning. We call it most popular is late winter, and some in summer pruning. It's in the same year after tree when it blossoms, and late winter pruning actually it's in the previous year when floral buds are formed. So the summer pruning has its pros and cons, and it's most used to actually the slow down vigorous trees or trees that are too large, but slows fruit development, and it risks the sunburn because when we open the canopy, it's in the summertime, the sun is really intense and it may affect the tree negatively. The second is no-brainers. What that means is remove the diseased or broken branches, remove suckers, water sprouts, and most competing branches growing straight up into the tree. And the third is the downward bending branches eventually lose vigor and produce or a few small fruit, cut off that part which is hanging down. So you are looking at this picture of the right side, water sprouts and suckers which are at the bottom of the tree. These suckers, water sprouts, if they are growing, they block the sunlight, and so that's why they need to be pruned. And downward bending branches also needs to be pruned because they are not going to bear good quality fruits. They have lost or almost lost the vigor, and they may produce a small fruit. So prune those downward bending branches. Next is right after planting a new tree, cut it off to short stick 24 to 30 inches high and cut any side shoots remaining below that 1 to 2 buds and paint the tree with white latex paint. Okay, so first 3 or 4 years, it's important that we prune these trees so that vigorously, so that they grow very fast and produce new branches and the flush and the shoots. So that can be done vigorously. So types of pruning cuts, here you are looking at these pictures. That heading cut, as you saw, that it cuts the apical region from the top, and the thinning cuts, they are done on the lateral branches, on the side branches to trim that. And the picture on the right side, the lowest with orange color you're looking at, that's the nicely thinning cuts, and that's the ultimate when this peach, I think it's a peach tree, maybe a couple of years, that has been thinned by thinning cuts. Next is the young trees. They should be pruned fairly heavily and encouraged to grow rapidly for the first 3 years without much fruit, as I mentioned in the earlier slide. First 3-4 years, because they are rapidly growing, they need more pruning fairly heavily so that encourages or stimulate vigorous growth. It leaves most of the small horizontal branches untouched for later fruiting, and vigorous growing young trees, they can be pruned much less or not at all and encouraged to fruit with branch bending. So I'll explain in the next slide. Here you go. So upright branches, generally, they remain vegetative and vigorous. Okay, those who are growing vertically or upright, they remain vegetative and vigorously growing. Horizontal branches, they are more fruitful. They have more floral buds, spurs maybe, and that's why they produce more fruits. So a good combination of the two is very necessary for fruiting now and in future years. And the branches bent to 45 to 60 degree achieves this balance very well. And you're looking at the picture on the left and right side about these angles. So when deciding where to cut, it is important that heading cuts, they encourage sprouting. And topping a vertical branch encourages vegetative growth. Tipping horizontal branches is done to renew fruiting wood and to thin off excessive fruit. And removal and reduction cuts. What happens removing vertical branches opens the tree to more light. And reducing horizontal branches, they may remove fruit, but it may prevent a branch from breaking from a heavy fruit load. So that's the difference between pruning vertical branches and horizontal branches which bear more fruits. Next is location of the cuts. It is also very important that where and how you are going to make these cuts. So the new growth occurs where you make the cut. The cut only affects the buds within 1 to 8 inch of the cut, not further down the branch. So look at the picture at the bottom. There are two pictures, the heading and the reduction. There are two cuts, it is shown. And with this illustration, you are looking at the distance from that collar. Actually, it is not really a collar, it's the shoot where the bud or the branch is attached from the distance, which is, it says 1 to 8 inch of the cut. So the more buds cut off, the more vigorous the new shoots will be. And heading cuts on vertical growth, they will result in the most new shoots, typically with very narrow angles. So heading cuts in vertical growth, it will spur the new shoots, but their angles will be narrow. And reducing a branch at a lateral, it may also spur the shoot growth, but not as much. So that's the difference between these two types of cut when we make heading and the reduction cuts. Continue to location of the cut. So consider where there is a potential bud growth. So you're looking at this picture at the left, and you are seeing that A and B, these two are the locations of these floral bud. And if cut above bud A is made and the cut above bud B. So there are two locations of the buds is shown, and it suggests that where you make these cuts on the above of the bud A, or in case of bud B, how you are going to make these cuts. Next is to prune to expose lower branches to sunlight. We heard in the beginning objectives. The third objective is to harvest the sunlight. So the pruning is done to expose the lower branches in trees to sunlight. And sun exposed wood, it remains fruitful and it produces the largest fruit. Shaded branches, eventually they stop fruiting and will never produce fruit without drastic topping and renewal of the entire tree. So that's why it's very important that we keep in mind the hanging branches, the downwards, or the lower branches where sunlight is not reaching to prove that. Make a nice and clean cuts. It's also very important. So on the left side, the first picture you are looking at, it shows very clear, clean, nice cut. Okay, and then second, third, and fourth, which you are looking at different types of cuts. And the last one is the ribbed cut, which is very clearly it's not a good, nice and clean cut, and it may spur this another the leaves and another growth of the shoot, which we don't want that. So nice and clean cut, that's very important. Angle of cut also, which is 45-degree, is very important, that the angle. The most recommended is 45-degree. If it is too angular, you are looking at that it is not really recommended, or if it is too low, it can affect the floral bud or leaf bud. And if it is too high, it's not going to work, because it has to be within that 1/4 that inch, a 1/4 inch above the floral bud. If it is too high, it may not give those desired results of the pruning. So 45-degree, that angle, and the distance from the bud is very important. Cutting smaller versus larger branches has to be also keep in mind. The smaller branches, we can use these pruners and cut from that collar. You can see that in the picture, the red dotted angle where it has to, the cut has to make. The larger branches are the difficult ones to cut, and depending on the tools you are using, you can make these 3 cuts. As you are looking at the right side of the picture, and you're seeing that this pole saw, you can use hand saw if no pole saw is available, that you make a first cut above that collar, and then second cut is made not the full, so that it weakens that branch, and then the final cut is made where we want to remove that branch, which is near that collar. So the final cut is made, and that helps in removing that complete branch, because first and second cut, it weakens that branch. So when reducing, it shorten a branch to a side branch that is at least 1/3 the size of the one being cut. So you're looking at this middle picture here in the reduction cut, that how branch is shortened to a side branch, and how the 1/3 the size of the branch, which is one being cut. So it is also very important that know your plant, whether you have a peach, nectarine, what type of fruit trees you are going to prune. So the peach, nectarine, blueberry, they bear on last year's shoot growth. Cherry, apple, pear, plum, they bear on spurs. Okay, apricot and pout produce short spurs on 2-year wood and older, and bear some fruit on 1-year-old wood also. Figs, they produce fruit on 1-year-old wood. Quince and persimmon bear on new growth. For citrus, we just keep branches pruned up off the ground. Okay, citrus, they also have actually the tea budding also. And in grapes, they bear most heavily on new growth of a 1-year-old wood. And kiwi, I'm not sure how many are kiwi growers, but in kiwi, flowers develop on current and last season shoots, and older wood rarely produce flowers. So it's important that what type of fruit tree you are working on, and the pruning, the practice you are applying, at what stage of the growth of the plant. This is the good picture showing the leaf bud versus fruiting spur. Leaf bud is smaller in size, and it is in the lateral branch, kind of really very located, attached to that branch in the node area. And fruiting spur is a little bit elongated, 2 to 3 inches, and there is a longer also fruiting spur. It is a pointed also, so there is a clear distinguish between leaf bud and fruiting spur. Here you go. So this is older apple spurs. You are looking at these floral buds, the fruiting buds here on the apple spur, which bearing these fruits, the buds. Apricot, cherry, plum spurs, they kind of look similar. Um, Now, the training system, there are mainly two types of training systems. One is the open center or vase shaped. So you're looking at the picture at the bottom, and you're seeing these branches where the main trunk is above the ground, maybe 2-3 feet, and then it opens like a vase. The branches, maybe mainly the 3 or 4 branches. So this is called open vase, the training system. It can be used on almost on all fruit and nut trees. And in the first year, select 3 to 4 limbs distributed evenly around the trunk. Leave small branches on these limbs for early fruiting and sunburn production. Head limbs, half their length should be 24 to 30 inches, about 2.5 feet. So that's how you start beginning that new plant, any fruit tree plant, you train for open vase shaped or open center or vase shaped. And at the second year, select 1 or 2 limbs on each primary, okay? And head these back to half their length, 24 to 30 inches, and then remove other limbs. So that's how you keep training the new plant and open up this canopy. The second type is a central leader system. And as you can see in the picture, it makes actually a tree smaller, okay? And how you train in central leader, that you select these lateral branches and space them evenly around the tree and 2 to 3 feet apart vertically, okay? And these laterals, they may need further trading to 45-degree angle. So the main trunk or leader, it goes in the middle, and the lateral branches, they need to be trained 2 to 3 feet apart, vertically, and it goes. So it's the central leader system where these laterals, they grow about 45-degree angle. And you're looking at the top view when these trees are trained in central leader. Here you go. So these are the two pictures you're looking at side by side. Open center system used for training stone fruits or open vase. And on the right side is the central leader system used for training apple and pear trees mainly. And on the top, you're looking at this picture. Sometimes some gardeners, they use mix of these both, which is called modified central leader, depending on the stage of the tree or kind of tree. It can be also used to train these fruit trees, modified central leader, which is mix of these both system. This is an example of I think the peach tree. It is planted and pruned. I think it's the first, second year, and then looking at after pruning how the new flush of leaves and growth occur, and finally you're looking at the same, that peach tree, that how it looks in about maybe couple of years. Timing of pruning, as I mentioned in the beginning, that there are two timings. Most common is late winter, which is actually a dormant pruning because the tree, they shed leaves and it's in dormant stage. which is the most common in the late winter. Summer pruning, it works well in combination with dormant pruning, and it also open up the tree to allow light into center. But as I mentioned in the beginning, that it may also bring sunburn if we are not careful with that. The pruning response, it varies with the tree. Different varieties, different crops, they grow differently. Let's say spur types in apples, the vigor level of the tree, the age of the tree, the rootstock, the orchard management practices, fertility, irrigation, soil constraints, your management practices, smaller fruit versus larger fruit crops. So that also, these are the factors that can affect the pruning response. So it varies. In summary, training, what is training is manipulating the plant to attain a desired shape, a good tree architecture. It promotes early fruiting. It increases fruit quality. It increases ease of care. And it is accomplished within the first few years of plant life. And pruning or cutting, it promote growth in desired areas. It stiffens the limbs, as I mentioned. It makes limbs stronger and harder so that it can sustain in the weather. It removes the dead, broken, and diseased limbs. It removes marginally fruitful or not fruitful limbs. Pruning promotes the development of wood for future crops. Thin the crop so that it increase the fruit size, and we do it annually beginning with year of planting. And practice, practice, practice. Practice makes man perfect. So as we say that, practice is very important. Concluding that remarks that many approaches work. No matter what you use, central leader or modified or open vase, there are different approaches. See what best works for you and you can adopt that. Open center is most common for peaches. Central leader is most common for palm fruits. But find a program that works best and then you can stick to it. Before I end, it's actually the end, but I'd like to show a quick video about 6 minutes. I'm not sure if I'm able to do that. Let me try. If not, Carla will help me here.
Hello, my name is Renee Moran, and I'm the tree fruits.
Okay,
So,
I think you've got to, how about if you stop sharing your screen and
Okay.
I can share the screen with the video because it doesn't look like it's coming up.
Okay, let me stop sharing screen.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go. Yeah, you can share that video.
Okay. Everybody say that
Hello,
okay?
my name is Renee Moran, and I'm the tree fruit specialist at the University of Maine. We're here at the Agricultural Experiment Station in Monmouth, and we call it the Highmore Farm. Today we're going to have a demonstration on pruning apple trees. It is the dormant season, the best time of the year to do the majority of pruning for our fruit trees. You want to prune your fruit trees between January and before growth starts in spring. And we're in the month of April right now, which is an ideal time for pruning because a lot of the snow is gone, but growth has not yet started. Before pruning, it's important to know why you're pruning your fruit trees. There are several reasons for pruning fruit trees that are part of a hobby orchard. Today we're going to prune this fruit tree to improve fruit production. But some people have apple trees that are part of a landscape, and in that case you would prune fruit trees for aesthetic reasons because of the shape of the tree and because of the flowers of the tree. But this tree will prune for improved fruit production. And to do that, we're going to prune it so that it gets the most amount of sunlight throughout the tree canopy. The tree behind me has already been pruned. When we pruned this tree, the first thing we did was to select which limbs to keep and then to prune the rest of the tree so that each limb gets the most amount of sunlight as possible without over pruning the tree. This tree has a typical shape for a semi-dwarf apple tree. It's a cone-shaped tree where the lower limbs are the longest limbs on the tree and the upper limbs are shorter than the tree. And there's only one main trunk or leader to the tree. This type of training gets the most amount of sunlight throughout the entire tree canopy. And you'll notice that the lower limbs don't have other limbs growing right on top of them. Those were pruned out or were not allowed to grow. And the upper limbs have been shortened so that they're not growing down and into the lower limbs. And the tree is pruned back in the top to be a certain height. The height would be of personal preference, usually based on how tall your ladder is or how high you're willing to reach into the tree. You'll also notice that the limbs have been pruned so that things growing underneath or growing in a downward fashion have been pruned off, and shoots that are growing straight up are no longer in this tree. This vertical or downward growing orientation cuts out a lot of sunlight, and these types of branches don't produce the best fruit, so they get pruned out. And then at some point you have to know when to stop pruning to prevent yourself from over pruning the tree. You don't want to prune out any more than 1/3 of the total tree canopy. To make a thinning cut, you would remove the shoot or limb at its base where it joins the previous growth, like this. When you're making a thinning cut, it's best to prune back as much of it as possible into the crown or the ring circles surrounding the base of that shoot. And this prevents the regrowth of water sprouts. The smaller the stump you leave, the fewer water sprouts you should have next year. And pruning back into the crown or the collar of the branch helps the pruning cut to heal. The other type of pruning cut is a heading cut. And in this case, you're pruning into the growth, leaving behind part of that shoot. And this would be a 1-year-old shoot. A heading cut into that would be like that. And when you remove the tip of that shoot, it releases these buds from the growth inhibition, and you get a bushy type of regrowth following the following season. We rarely make this type of pruning cut when we're pruning fruit trees. So in this case, I'm going to head it back into the 2-year-old section like that. But a more severe type of heading cut would be to be pruning into this section of the limb. And we already have branches that have developed. So when by making a heading cut into this part of the branch, we're not likely to stimulate the growth of new shoots. And so we don't get a profusion to follow. And this type of pruning cut is very useful for making the branches shorter, where you have trees growing into each other. A heading cut into the older sections of the branch will make it shorter. And it's also useful in the top part of the tree to bring the height down. It's also important to pay attention to how many flower buds are on the apple tree when you're pruning it to prevent yourself from pruning out too many. Flower buds on an apple tree have a characteristic shape that is very different from leaf buds. Flower buds are found at the tips of short shoots and spurs. Spurs are just shoots that grew a few inches or less in one season. Flower buds are fat in contrast to leaf buds, which are much smaller and shorter or more pointed. Laterally along the shoots and spurs, apples normally form leaf buds. In rare instances, they'll form flower buds. So pay attention to how many flower buds the tree has. If it has a lot of flower buds in this year, it's okay to prune off a number of these shoots that have flower buds. We've reached a point where the tree is nearly finished pruning, especially on this side. There's still a lot of shoots on that side that can be pruned out. If you like to have a lot of flowers on your fruit trees, then this would be a great place to stop pruning it. But if you're pruning it to get the best colored, largest fruit, this tree could still use more pruning.
What happened? I think there was, but it is done. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. I did
I
something
think,
wrong.
yeah, I think there is
I
still
can
a
hear
minute
still.
left.
Okay. Okay, I think we're good now.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I still had the video running. Can you still hear that?
we can still run that. I think last 5 minutes, maybe 1 minute left. You wanna try that, or it's fine? Anyway, this is the link for this YouTube video, which you all can watch later. And these are the resources, including that video. And the University of California, they have a good website on fruit trees pruning. And also University of Tennessee, Dr. Larkwood has a couple of publications which I have shared with Carla on pruning fruit trees and management. And ATRA, they have some publications on organic management of fruit trees diseases. These are the resources. And with this, thank you. That's all. Any questions? I think we have time for the question. And actually, I'm looking at the chat box.
Muted.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, we had one. I think I got that answered about using pruning tar or paint on the wounds. I mean, it's always been a recommendation not to use those things, just to let the trees seal up naturally.
That's right.
Because if you're pruning at the right time of the year, you should be good to go on that.
Correct.
And that goes on all trees. We don't recommend that anymore. So discuss dormant and horticulture oils, why to use them, and the best time to apply them.
So the dormant stage, when the tree is not actively producing fruits or actively growing shoots or leaves, and that is basically, it's in the late winter. You know, we see that effect from the fall, and the tree, they start shedding leaves and they go in the dormant stage, means that they are not very actively growing and producing fruits or new leaves, and they shed the leaves. So that's actually a dormant stage. The use of horticultural oil is, there is one publication, and that is mentioned in the fact sheet, which I have shared with Carla, which she will be sharing with you. The horticultural oil is applied to prevent the diseases in peach and pears before pruning and after pruning. So that helps in controlling disease in fruit trees, the horticultural oil. That's the role of that. So that's why I had mentioned about the horticultural oil. And there is a good publication on that. And that link in the, bless you, it's in
Bless
the
you.
fact sheet.
Yes. Sorry.
can I ask, so that main video was talking about April up there, it's an okay time to prune. If I'm new to pruning my fruit trees and haven't done it, is it too late at this point in the season for me to go ahead and do it here in Tennessee?
Well, see, this time I mentioned in the beginning is a little unusual. We still are in the little bit chilly, you know, this week especially, and pruning the best time, late winter, actually we start in February, kind of January, February, we do that mostly, maybe in March, depending on the, you know, the weather conditions. Now, it's a little bit late, but you can still try that. What crop you're looking at? Apple, you said?
Pear.
Yeah, again, it depends. If you have not done any pruning on that tree, probably you can still do that, maybe, you know, 10–20%. I don't know, it is blooming. So there are two conditions for that. For the summer pruning, it's after blossom. And the winter pruning, you know, the dormant stage when we do, it's actually when do pruning and then it blossoms, you know, I mean, before blossom, okay? So that's the difference. So depending on the stage of your fruit trees, your apple trees, you can decide that.
Okay.
But I mentioned that don't never do over 1/3 of pruning of any given time. No matter what, if you have not done pruning in, you know, on your trees, don't do over 1/3. Like about, I would say about 30% is good. Maximum one should do pruning about 30%. You know, don't go over that because it can affect the plant growth and development, and it can probably cause the negative. So that's one
Yeah,
thing I wanted to share.
It's got a whole bunch of shoots that are going straight up, but they're really close to each other. So it sounds like I need to kind of tie them out so they spread out and then just prune a couple of them.
Yeah, so in that case, you can do the little pruning on the you know, the upright shoots and the bending branches. Some of those you can still do that. You know, there is no harm in removing those branches, especially those who are the diseased ones, or, you know, not producing the fruits, and the bending ones, the upright, the minor, you can still do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions? You can open your mics and ask Dr. Nandwani questions if you'd like to. I don't see any other ones in the chat box. Okay, well, that was a very thorough presentation, Dr. Nandwani, and we appreciate you being here with us today. And I will forward on a recording of this in the publications that you attached to all our participants. And I guess we will see you all in June for our next Wacky Wednesday.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.